It was supposed to be a celebration, our 11th wedding anniversary. The kind with soft jazz, candles flickering, and a cake my wife had designed months in advance. She called it her dream cake, 3 tiers, vanilla bean, topped with sugar roses that matched her favorite scarf. I had the florist match the table bouquet to it. She smiled when she saw it. Everyone was there. Our son, 26, standing tall in a blazer he barely pressed. Our daughter, arms crossed like she always was. A few family friends. Laughter in the air, the kind that floats above wine and old stories. Then came the moment, the one that divided everything. She leaned in to blow out the candles, laughing. And, in that instant, he shoved her face into it. Not playfully, not jokingly, forcefully, intentionally. The room went silent. Her face, once glowing, was now covered in frosting and hot wax. A red welt formed on her cheek. I reached out instinctively, but my daughter laughed. Loudly. "Oh, come on," she said. "It's just cake." Mom's being dramatic. My wife didn't speak. She quietly wiped her face with a cloth napkin, then stood up. Her eyes didn't meet mine. She walked out of the room like a ghost. I stood there frozen. Our guests looked at me. Some uncomfortable. Some amused. He shrugged. "It was just a joke, Dad." But it wasn't. It was a crack in the dam I'd spent years reinforcing. A son who'd grown into entitlement. A daughter who learned from her mother's silence. And a man who built a family that forgot what respect looked like. That night, my wife didn't sleep beside me. She curled up in the guest room like a stranger in her own home. And I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, asking myself, have you ever built a home so carefully only to realize the people inside it never saw you, or each other, as human? My name is Eugene Wallace. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Because that night changed something in me. And the next day, the knock on their door wasn't from me. It was from my brother. The next morning, I didn't speak. I poured my coffee like always, watched the steam rise, but I didn't say a word. My wife sat across the table with a swollen cheek and eyes that looked older than they did yesterday. I wanted to reach for her hand, but guilt anchored mine to the mug. She didn't cry. She didn't need to. Sometimes silence is the loudest grief. At 9:12 a.m., there was a knock on the front door. Firm, rhythmic, not urgent, but deliberate. I already knew who it was. My older brother, Harold. He didn't wait for me to answer. He opened the door like he used to when we were kids, as if he built the house himself. Same old denim jacket, same boots from his construction days. And in his right hand, a baseball bat. Not raised, not threatening, just carried. He looked me in the eye and said, "Where are they?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. He nodded, as if my silence was all the permission he needed. My daughter and son had slept over at their apartment, the one I helped pay for after his third failed startup. He said he wanted space to think. Harold didn't take the truck. He walked. And me? I sat there and let the coffee go cold. Some would say I should have stopped him. But Harold, he wasn't a man of violence. He was a man of reckoning. His way was never with fists. It was with words that broke through years of pride and polished denial. And when he arrived at their apartment door, my son opened it lazily, probably expecting a food delivery. What happened inside those 4 walls, I wouldn't hear about until later. But I know Harold, and I know his voice doesn't rise. It just presses on the softest parts of your soul, the ones you've been pretending don't ache. That evening, my daughter called. "Dad." Uncle Harold came by. He was intense. I didn't respond, because part of me was still sitting with the question. What happens when the people who raised you finally hold up a mirror you can't look away from? The next day, my wife didn't speak a word. She moved through the kitchen like a whisper, hands gentle, lips pressed together. No makeup, no earrings. Just silence. I watched her pause by the fridge and slowly place the uneaten anniversary cake inside. Her fingers brushed the frosting like she was saying goodbye to something only she could see. And me? I wanted to scream. Not at her. At myself. How did I raise a son who thought humiliation was funny? A daughter who mistook cruelty for comedy? I called Harold that afternoon. What did you say to them? I asked. He took a long breath. I reminded them of the stories Mom used to tell. About dignity. About grace. And how they've spat on both. Silence. Then he added, I told them they didn't break her with that cake, but they damn well cracked something in you. He wasn't wrong. Something had cracked. Not just in me, but in the way I saw my legacy. You work your whole life thinking you're building something sacred. Sunday breakfasts. Shared laughter. Birthday candles. But sometimes you're just laying bricks for a house that forgets who lit the first fire. That evening, my daughter came over alone. She stood awkwardly by the door, holding a small bouquet. Is Mom okay? She asked. I looked her square in the eye. She's alive, I said. Her shoulders sank. It was just a dumb joke, Dad. No, I cut in. It was a choice. She blinked. You chose to laugh. You chose to call your mother dramatic instead of hurt. You chose him over her. And now you're here with flowers you should have handed her yesterday. She didn't know what to say. And, as she left, I looked at that cake in the fridge one last time. 3 tears. One for every decade I've given to this family. And suddenly it looked less like dessert, and more like a monument to everything I let slide in silence. What's the cost of staying quiet when your soul is screaming for someone to finally listen? By the 3rd day, my wife had stopped entering the master bedroom. At first, I thought it was temporary, a cooling off. But every night, she carried her folded nightdress and a pillow to the guest room like it was ritual. She didn't slam doors. She didn't weep. But her silence, it echoed louder than any fight we'd ever had. I stood in the hallway that night, watching the sliver of light beneath her door. I wanted to knock, to say something, anything. But how do you apologize for years of erosion you didn't see until the foundation finally cracked? I thought about the early days, how she used to brush her hair by the window, humming old Otis Redding tunes. How she saved every birthday card I wrote, even the silly ones. Now, she walked past me like I was wallpaper. And my son? He sent a text. Didn't mean to upset anyone. Chill. No call. No visit. Just 3 sentences of nothing. I didn't reply. I went to the basement instead, to the old cedar chest we hadn't opened in years. Inside photo albums, our wedding VHS tape, drawings from when the kids were still sweet. And, at the bottom, tucked in a worn envelope, I found a letter. From her. Dated 8 years ago. If I ever become invisible in my own home, please remind me that I exist. I sat on the concrete floor with that letter in my hands, and something in me broke. She had seen this coming. She had left breadcrumbs for a man too busy providing to realize she was starving for more than just comfort. The next morning, I walked into the guest room and found her reading. She didn't look up, so I placed the letter beside her, then stepped back. She paused, fingers brushing the faded edges. Her lips parted, but no words came. Just a breath. A long, tired breath. And I wondered, what's the weight of being loved, but never protected? I built this house with my own hands. Not metaphorically. I laid the bricks. I measured the beams. Every corner of this place echoes with my sweat and hope. But somehow, I'd become a stranger inside it. She passed me in the hallway like a shadow. The woman who once danced barefoot in our kitchen now moved as if the floor might give way beneath her. And the saddest part? I didn't blame her. That night, I sat on the porch with Harold. He didn't say much. He never did. Just rocked gently in that old cedar chair. The one we'd patched 3 times and refused to throw away. You remember when Mom caught me skipping school? He finally asked. I chuckled. She didn't yell. Just looked at you. He nodded. And I never skipped again. Then he turned to me. Your kids, they've never been looked at like that. He was right. We'd raised them on comfort, not consequence. Gave them options, not boundaries. We mistook love for indulgence. And now, they didn't just disrespect their mother, they erased her. I opened the filing cabinet the next morning, pulled out the house deed, the living trust, the account statements. Her name wasn't on enough. Mine was everywhere. And that was the problem. I had made her invisible on paper long before they ever did it in person. So I made calls. Quiet ones. Legal ones. The house? Rewritten. The savings? Restructured. Every document now bore her name beside mine, equal, bold, undeniable. That evening, I handed her the folder. She didn't open it at first. Just stared at me, confused. Then she flipped through the pages. I watched her shoulders shift, just slightly. Like a burden had moved. Not gone, but seen. She whispered, "Why now?" I answered, "Because I've been wrong longer than I've been right. And I'm tired of watching you disappear." And as she blinked away a tear she didn't want me to see, I thought, how many men confuse provision with presence, until the woman beside them becomes a ghost. It was a week after the cake. The house had settled into an uneasy rhythm. Meals were quieter, steps softer, glances brief. Then the envelopes arrived. 2 of them. Thick, glossy. Hand-delivered. One for me. One for her. A baby blue card inside. Gold foil letters embossed across the top. "You're invited. Taylor and Jen's engagement celebration. Our son." His fiancée. The same son who hadn't called since the joke. The irony wasn't lost on us. Inside the envelope, the date, the venue, the theme, champagne and sunsets, and a handwritten note at the bottom. "Hope you've moved on from all that drama. Let's celebrate fresh starts." My wife stared at the card for a long time. Then she folded it, not neatly, but slowly. Precisely. Like closing a chapter. She placed it back in the envelope and slid it into the trash. I didn't say anything. But I didn't throw mine away. Not yet. Instead, I walked to the garage. Dusted off a crate we hadn't opened in years. Inside were dozens of save things. Baby shoes, finger paintings, a broken watch he gave me when he was 7. All the small ways love leaves clues. And then I saw it, an old photo from his high school graduation. His arm around his mom's shoulder. She was laughing in it. That photo hurt more than the invitation. Because it reminded me there was a time he adored her. A time when she wasn't disposable. That night I called him. No answer. I called again. Voicemail. I didn't leave a message. Instead, I sent him one thing. A scanned copy of that graduation photo. No words. No caption. And I waited. An hour later, he replied. "That was a long time ago, Dad. Things change." I stared at those words. Cold. Casual. Detached. And I whispered to myself, yes, things change. And some doors, once closed, should never open again. Because sometimes the real celebration isn't the one you're invited to. It's the one you quietly decide not to attend. 3 days before the engagement party, I stood at the kitchen table, the RSVP card in my hand. 2 checkboxes. Attending. Regretfully decline. I stared at them for a long time, pen hovering. My wife hadn't brought it up again. She'd moved on, not out of forgiveness, but out of self-preservation. She'd started volunteering again, wearing earrings, watering her plants. She laughed once over coffee when the cat knocked over the sugar bowl. But that smile didn't reach her eyes. She was healing. Without them. Without needing to be a mother to grown children who didn't remember who taught them how to be kind. I placed the RSVP down. Left it blank. Walked outside. Harold was on the porch again, sanding an old bench. He didn't ask anything. Just passed me a beer and nodded at the empty chair. "I guess you're not going," he said. I shook my head. "They'll notice." He sipped. "Good. Let them." I leaned back. You ever think about how fast the years went? Feels like yesterday we were changing diapers. He turned to me, jaw clenched. And now they wiped their feet on the people who raised them. We sat there for a long while. The sun dipped low. The wind carried the scent of rosemary from her garden. And suddenly I knew. I wouldn't just stay home. I'd give them something to remember. The next morning, I wrote a letter. Not angry. Not bitter. Just honest. I wrote about the cake. About the silence. About what it means to watch the woman you love be humiliated by the child you gave her. And then, at the bottom, I wrote, "This is my RSVP, not to your event, but to my own peace." I sealed it. dropped it at their apartment mailbox. And as I walked away, I felt something lift. Not victory, just closure. Have you ever stopped chasing a seat at the table and built one on your own porch instead? Because sometimes choosing not to show up is the loudest thing you'll ever do. It's been 6 months. The engagement party came and went. Photos floated online, gold balloons, champagne glasses, smiling faces. They posted captions like family forever and nothing but love. We weren't mentioned. No tag. No thank you. But I didn't expect one. My wife and I spent that evening on the porch. She wore that same scarf from our anniversary. I made her tea. Harold stopped by with lemon pie. We didn't speak about the cake. We didn't have to. It's still in the freezer, half melted, sealed in plastic. She didn't throw it out. I think she's waiting for herself to be fully ready. And I understand now. Because grief doesn't just come when someone dies. It comes when love is betrayed. When the people you raised forget the hands that held them. We get mail from them sometimes, holiday cards, once a brief invite to brunch. We never reply. It's not out of vengeance. It's out of clarity. You don't rebuild bridges with people who set fire to the first one, and then hand you a match to fix it. A month ago, she framed the deed to the house, the new one, with both our names. She hung it in the hallway. Right above a small plaque she carved herself. It reads, "Here, respect is not a request. It is a requirement." People visit, real friends, Harold, her book club. There's warmth in our home again. A gentleness. Last night, I caught her humming by the window. Otis Redding again. She turned, smiled, and this time her eyes smiled too. And that's when I knew. We didn't lose a son. We found ourselves. We stopped begging for seats at tables that mocked our kindness. And we built a table of our own, with fewer chairs but stronger legs. And the cake? It'll stay frozen. A reminder of what melted, and what we chose to save. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge is living the life they never thought you would, without ever saying a word.